all on board. What should I do?
Ah, ich weiß.
Hallo und willkommen. Ich bin Meister Lenzi and you're watching Germanized, the unspoken rules of Germany, or rules of etiquette in Germany. In Deutschland we have something called the Knigge, which is a Benimm guide. So basically a guide on how to behave properly in certain situations in daily life. And some of these rules that I'm going to present to you today are from this guide. So thank you Knigge, but also thank you common sense. Let's go. Lasst uns anfangen. First up, shaking hands. Shaking hands is something almost everyone can do and is usually one of the standard forms of greeting here in Germany. In the pandemic, or since the pandemic has started, that has changed. Now people do this, whatever, do this, maybe even fist bump if you're feeling particularly gutsy, or some people have clicked their heels together and others anything else really but shaking hands. Of course, this friendly tradition traces back to something, well, from the past. How did it originate, you ask? Well, it originated by presenting each other's empty hands to the other person so that they know, oh, they came in peace and without weapons. Of course, you might have hidden daggers, poison, whatsoever, but at least you didn't have a dagger in hand or a sword in hand. So presenting each other's empty hands has progressed into clasping hands and shaking them. Yes. If you're more the old-fashioned type, you might want to tip your hat, but mostly these days people take off their hats when in church, for example. It is considered polite also to do this when you're indoors and greet each other. Then you're not supposed to wear a base cap or a hat or something like that. To be honest, I've never seen this supposed polite courtesy exchanged very often at all. I've only seen that people take off their hats when going into the Cologne Cathedral, for example. But when it comes to the greeting, the rule is pretty simple. The elderly person shakes the hand of the younger person first, or the lady of the gentleman, or the superior of the subordinate. If someone doesn't want to shake hands, like I said, there's a friendly greeting that can be exchanged instead. In a friendly manner though, not something else, gesture-wise. Next up, the proper greeting. There's of course an order to things here in Germany when it comes to greeting. Did you expect anything else? I hope not. The gentlemen, for example, are of course introduced to the ladies first. And the younger person is introduced to the older person first. And when there's a new individual that joins a group, the individual is supposed to be introduced to the group, not the other way around. And of course, the lower ranking person is introduced to the higher ranking person and so forth. If you possess a title that is not included in the introduction, by the way, you just introduce yourself with your first and last name. The only exception here is when you make yourself known by a third party, then titles are mentioned. Oh, Duke of Canterbury is entering the room. Also, you might have heard of the terms Gatte or Gattin when it comes to husband and wife. Those terms are outdated and no longer used though. So if you introduce your spouse as your Gatte, that is probably incorrect. Instead you can say, das ist meine Frau oder das ist mein Mann. This is my wife or my husband. In Germany we use Mann for husband and Frau for wife. It becomes clear that it is husband and wife when you say meine or mine. Next up is PDA, public display of affection, or more particularly kissing in public. Of course, a short kiss is no problem if you just give your partner a peck on the cheek or mouth or whatever, no one will bat an eye, but long, intense and awkward sexual kisses are a little bit inappropriate, maybe even a lot of bit inappropriate here in Germany. At least in public. The reason for this is that it could make, for example, a single person, well, uncomfortable because they're not in a relationship, and even cuddling in public could offend some people because, well, they don't know where to look. I don't want to stare at them, but what are they doing? Are they doing more than just cuddling? I don't know. And their head explodes and they're gone. You don't want that, do you? Or maybe you do, I don't know you. Next up, etiquette at shopping. For example, if you see someone with heavy bags in both arms and they're trying to open the shop's door. Oh, I can't, I have shopped too much, I am shopped out, all shopped out. And then you should rush there and open the door for them or help them at least. because that is just the polite thing to do. Sometimes if you know the cashier at the checkout, it is enough to give them a nod if you don't want to do it yourself, and they might help them if they feel like it, because sometimes service is terrible in Germany, unfortunately. Also, if you go shopping carts and racks and shelves should be left as you found them. So don't just pull out stuff and then crinkle it back in there or stuff it back in there, whatever, and leave the shop attendant to deal with it when they or if they even see it. That is just not polite. Instead, well, leave it as you found it, and also if you tried on things and they don't fit you, don't like them, you put them back on the designated clothes rack, mostly in front of the changing rooms. That way the attendant can right away see that there is something to be put back, and they can do it, instead of, well, trashing the place. And I know this is common sense, but I will say it anyway. There's no pushing at the checkout, and there's queuing up instead of just pushing your way to the front. And also, when someone shops way less than you, it is polite to let them go first. When you're at the checkout, it is also impolite to talk on your phone. I know that some people still do this. It makes me angry just thinking about it. I don't know why. And it's also impolite to pay for something with your headphones in, because the attendant is not sure if you can even hear them. Even if you might have noise-canceling headphones that you can deactivate, how are they supposed to know? Next up, public transport etiquette. Unspoken rules of public transport, I should say. Well, for example, a free seat, can be taken by everyone. That's not how you do it. A free seat can be taken by anyone. So you might have expected this. Leaving your backpack or your shopping or whatever on the seat next to you or in front of you or wherever is impolite, because that blocks a free seat that could be taken by someone, even if you feel uncomfortable having some stranger sit next to you. It is also just common sense and polite to offer your seat to an elderly person or a pregnant person or anyone else who might need this seat more than you do. Of course, if there's no other seats available, or if you feel like they can't get to that seat easily. Also, while on public transport, music should be heard in a manner that does not disturb anyone else. So don't blast your metal music or your rap or your techno, whatever you prefer, or your classical music even, on your headphones, because other people might not have the same taste in music as you do. And even if you think it's super cool, that you look cool, you probably don't, and you are perceived as a jackass instead of a cool person. So don't do it. It is also similar to in Japan, actually, inappropriate and impolite to talk loudly on your phone in public transport. I personally have a pet peeve to this, because I mean, some people just act as if they own the place when they're on a train or bus or whatever. They just talk as if they're at home with their family, and they talk about super private stuff and inappropriate stuff, and I'm like, dude, no. Just no. I don't know what's up with people sometimes. Of course, also Schwarzfahren, so black driving, aka fare evasion, is taboo. If more people actually bought valid tickets, fare prices would probably sink. If you have a seat at a compartment, for example on a train, then you should greet people that are already inside in a friendly manner. Of course, you should also say goodbye if you leave. Next up is educating children in public. There's an etiquette to it. Children, first of all, should not constantly be admonished by their parents in public. I of course understand that some parents want to show off their parenting skills in public when their children misbehave. But constantly reprimanding their kids, I don't know, it could lead to the assumption that, well, they are super misbehaved children, you don't have any skills because apparently you can't teach them right at home. I personally get really uncomfortable sometimes when there's a parent who really gives it to their children in public. Makes me feel super uncomfortable. I worry for the kids sometimes because I don't know them, I don't know what's going on. So just don't do that. Adults in general, and especially parents, should not underestimate their role model function in public. Exposure and rudeness usually set a bad example. Next up, etiquette at public events. For example, if someone wants to pass you at an event, for example a theater play or at the cinema or something like that, you are supposed to, well, make room and not just lay down even further or make them trip or something like that. Duh. It's also important to not show them your hindsight when passing them, so face them, face to face. Because otherwise, like, I mean, no one wants to look at your butt, despite of how gorgeous it might be. Okay, maybe some people want to look at your butt, but it's rude. Don't do it. Also very typical for Germany, Lateness should be avoided. Punctuality is key. It's just respectful to be punctual when you go on a date, when you have an appointment, anything like that. If you show up very late or even like a little bit late, people might think like, wow, you don't respect my time, that means you don't respect me. Jacket and coats, similar to how it is handled in other countries, I assume, can be left at check rooms. Easy. And if you're at the movie theater, you can just leave your jacket at the seat next to you. Yes, in this case it's allowed, but only if there's no other person coming. Well, if there's someone coming late, you make room for them, of course, especially if they booked the seat, because that is a thing people do in Germany. Also at the movie theater, drinks and popcorn should be consumed as quietly as possible. I would just remember what I always do. I wait for an action scene and then that's me at the movie theater, yeah. But anyway, don't chew loudly or even talk loudly. Don't have loud conversations at all. I hate that so much. I don't know, I always feel like there's always someone doing this. But in Germany especially, some people get angry, they turn around and yell at you if you have loud conversations with your friends. I mean, when everyone's laughing at a funny scene, that is different, of course. But constant conversation is just a disturbance. Not in the force, maybe even in the force, but just in general. So these were some of the unspoken rules that we have here in Germany. If you want me to continue this series and tell you more, because there's much more, then let me know in the comments below and leave a like to show me your support, and subscribe if you haven't yet, activate the bell and all the good stuff. And apart from that, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to get Germanized. Goodbye and auf Wiedersehen.